wanted to take a few minutes to talk about preparing for and writing FRQ questions, as you'll have your first of these on the unit test about the end of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance coming up later this week. The first thing to talk about is the grading rubric. I've just excerpted from a generic rubric. The actual AP test has specific criteria for each specific question, but this one gives you a sense about the highest scores and what the things that the readers look for in those are. And this is what I'll use as a foundation for questions throughout the year. The themes are, I think, pretty straightforward as you look at this. You need to have a clear thesis that addresses the question, has to have clear organization. So we've talked about structural thesis statements and the need to address ideally 3 distinct points in your argument. The third point here, this well-balanced, is something that's new. That means that all of the evidence you bring up in each body paragraph is roughly comparable in terms of detail and depth and volume to that of the other paragraphs. If you make a claim, you provide evidence to support it. That is a familiar point. And then note that this last one says you can have errors that don't detract from the argument. So if you get a specific date wrong or misspell a name, that's not the end of the world. You can still score a very strong essay even with those things. And as you go down to 4s and 5s and then 3s, 2s, and 1s, those descriptors become less and less favorable. So, thesis doesn't address the question, the organization is unclear, the essay is imbalanced, the assertions are not supported, the errors do detract from the argument. So that gives you a sense about what we're looking for here, and I think it's fairly familiar stuff. So to give you a sense about how I would encourage you to approach these and pre-write them, I want to take a look at 2 different examples having to do with the Renaissance. Here's a question that appeared on a previous AP exam. So explain the ways in which Italian Renaissance humanism transformed ideas about the individual's role in society. So hopefully as you read this question, there are a couple key points that jump out at you and you have a clear sense about what your task is here. I always encourage annotating the question so that you make sure that you're addressing what it asks you to do. That's one of the easiest ways to make sure you score well, is that you read the question closely and your paragraphs address what the question is asking you to say. So here, I hope the things that you flagged would be that you have to focus on Italian Renaissance humanism, and then you have to connect that, notice that key verb there, transformed, ideas about individuals' role in society. So each of your body paragraphs needs to address a way in which Italian Renaissance human transformed ideas about individuals' role in society. The question suggests a causal connection, and that is the causal connection that you have to pursue and develop in each body paragraph. So one of the ways I think is most effective to prepare and pre-write an FRQ is to chart it out, to figure out whatever it is the question is asking you and set it up in a little grid so that you can, once you have it outlined very briefly, can address each body paragraph quickly in the 35 minutes that you'll have to write it on the actual exam. So here's an example of what a chart might look like for this essay prompt. This essay prompt is quite simple in that it's not comparative. So you have 3 different columns. Hopefully you can see my cursor here identifying the first way in which Italian Renaissance humanism shapes the individual's role in society, the second way that's true, and the third way that's true. And so here you'll try to just start harnessing details. What's the first way I want to talk about how Renaissance humanism shapes ideas about individualism? Second way in which that happens, and then third way in which that happens. I've just very quickly brainstormed and brought up a couple different ideas that one could mention. And I think you'll see that these are familiar if we go to the Sprite categories. The Sprite categories can help you here. So you can think, okay, what is true about politics and how Italian Renaissance humanism affects politics and how that shapes the individual's role in society? So very briefly, I just thought, okay, I'll talk about the way humanism prioritizes artwork and individual accomplishment in artwork, and then mention some artists and paintings that we've seen, and also mention Vasari, who we've talked about, and his celebration of individual accomplishment in his group biography. I'll talk about society and the social values, so I might talk about Castiglione and his Book of the Courtier and his new ideas about what Renaissance men and women should do. I might also draw on our summer reading and think about Poggio Bracciolini and how he is celebrated for his transformation of scientific notions by reviving the Lucretius poem. And then I'll talk about politics as well and think about how individuals within the Medici family can transform Florence and can harness the ideas of virtù to affect the governing of the city and to transform its landscape through commissioning buildings, hiring artists, so on and so forth. And then I forgot, I guess I didn't finish typing here, mea culpa. Talk about Machiavelli's political philosophy is what I would have said, and how the individual leader, Machiavelli suggests, should pursue actions that keep him or her in power rather than those that are morally right. So there's an example about a very quick pre-writing that would then allow me to stay on task and address 3 body paragraphs that each address the question and have specific evidence that's balanced, right? 2 or 3 points for each body paragraph. Here's another example. I won't give you the details here, but just for you to think about how you would address this. There's another question. Discuss how Renaissance ideas are expressed in the Italian and Northern art of the period, referring to specific works and artists. So again, hopefully this question is one where you see that it's pushing you to connect 2 distinct elements together and do that connection in an argumentative way. So on this next slide, I've highlighted the key parts that hopefully you'll link together. You have to take Renaissance ideas. Hopefully that rings for you the isms, right? Think about those isms. And then how are they expressed? So how do you see isms in artwork? This is essentially what we've been working on in class, doing the analysis of close description and seeing its manifestation in artwork. So I would chart this one out a little bit differently because it is comparative. The things you have to connect Renaissance ideas with are both Italian and Northern art. So to achieve that balance, you've got to make sure that you address both of these elements in the body paragraphs. So here's how I've charted it out. Renaissance idea 1, Renaissance idea 2, Renaissance idea 3. I can fill in what those are once I get a sense of it. And then I know I have to talk about both Italian art and Northern art. And it says of this period, we've talked that we're dealing with roughly 1350 to 1600. This ensures that you stay within the time period and that you harness evidence that is in fact from this era. With these comparative essays, there's some tricks, or at least ways to organize that I think are more effective than others. One potential way to organize, but I think is less effective, is to have one big paragraph about Italian art. You can see I've highlighted all of the orange stuff. So I would talk about Italian art in one paragraph and show 3 ideas of Italian art. And then the next paragraph I talk about Northern art and show 3 ideas of Northern art. And then I would be left with a 2 body paragraph essay. I think it's more effective to organize here vertically so that you have one body paragraph all about the first Renaissance idea in both Italian art and Northern art. This allows you to do commentary that's comparative instead of just descriptive throughout. Second idea, maybe humanism or classicism or whatever, talking about Italian art and Northern art side by side, and then the third idea talking about it side by side. So I'll let you brainstorm and won't fill in the details about which specific artists or pieces or characteristics you would address, but this at least gives you a way to get down a framework of what the question's asking you to do and start filling in some key details and ensure that you are able to get something down rather than feeling stymied and can therefore start scoring better. So please be in touch if you have any questions. I hope that this has proved helpful, and I'll look forward to seeing your insights on the test. Thank you.